It's time for the Lovable Me Show. Based on the award-winning book series, I Am a Lovable Me. Get ready to have some fun learning with Lovable, our resident enlightening bug. Are you ready? Close your eyes and let's count to 3. 1, 2, 3. Now open them. Here we go.
Hello and welcome to the Lovable Me Show. I'm Sharon Penchina, your host and author of the award-winning I Am a Lovable Me books for children. To kick things off, we'll start the show with our weekly video vlog message. And today's vlog is all about teaching children to adopt good habits. But make sure you stick around because after the short video plays, I have a special guest here today, and she's going to share some great tips on how to parent consciously. So don't go anywhere. I'll be right back.
Welcome to the Lovable Me weekly vlog, where you will find valuable tools and enlightenment to support your child's self-confidence and self-esteem. It is easier to prevent bad habits than to break them. Benjamin Franklin. Good habits establish your child's personality, and it is never too early for your baby or toddler to begin learning good habits and behaviors. Acquiring good habits or manners are part of the learning process and become second nature through regular practice. It is important to remember your child learns by copying you, so it is important to practice what you preach. Recent brain research shows that birth to age 3 are the most important years in a child's development. Here are 4 habits and behaviors you can start practicing with your young child to help him or her learn responsibility in their most influential years. 1. Practicing independent playtime. Independent playtime can begin as early as 6 months to a year of age. It will take some practice for your child to learn this new skill. However, he or she will gain independence, confidence, creativity, problem-solving skills, and have the opportunity to explore the world around him or her on their own. 2. Have your child clean up after themselves. Beginning at the toddler age is a great time to teach your child the responsibility for cleaning up after themselves. 3. Teach your child good manners and communication skills. Good manners and communication skills are both important habits to practice when your child is little. Teaching your child to say please and thank you from a very early age is a great way to start good manners. 4. Practice good hygiene. As parents, you are setting the stage for your child's future hygiene habits. It is never too early to begin brushing teeth with your child. Washing hands is also an important habit to practice so your child gets into the routine of washing after using the bathroom, playing at the park, before snack and meals. It is key to encourage good habits of children in the early years because habits acquired in this phase will stay with them for the rest of their lives. And don't forget to check out our Lovable Me books in Apple iBooks, Amazon Kindle Books, and Google Play Books.
Welcome back. My guest today is Shonnie Lavender. Shonnie coaches and supports conscious parents to create connected, respectful, and thriving families by eliminating fear-based parenting methods. She's been featured in the Huffington Post, Elephant Journal, Motherly, and numerous other podcasts and radio talk shows. She holds a master's degree, did her coaching training at Coach U, and received her coaching accreditation through the International Coach Federation. You can find Shonnie on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook, as well as her website, ShonnieLavender.com. Shonnie, I'm really excited to have you here today. Welcome to the Lovable Me Show.
Thanks so much, Sharon. I'm so glad to be here, and I really appreciate the invitation. So I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Great. Well, I am too. I'm excited to talk about this topic, conscious parenting, because it seems to me that the decision to consciously parent stems from a deep desire to show up, at our highest level of consciousness when it comes to teaching and supporting our kids. And I would imagine in doing so, it might entail greater discernment on the part of each of us, as well as having the courage to challenge old paradigms. And, I know you talk about the pitfalls of relying on punishment as an approach to discipline and the long-term negative effects of using that approach. What approach do you recommend parents take to help children have more self-discipline or self-control? How can parents better equip themselves and adopt better skills to do that?
It's a great question, and I think I want to answer it in two parts because you talked about how can parents equip themselves. And so I think one of the things you already were speaking to it is that discernment. It is paying attention, noticing where we're coming from. What's my agenda? What's going on? Not just, what were the words that came out of my mouth, but why did I say that? And so it's not about micromanaging ourselves because, that can be just overwhelming. And yet it is being mindful and paying attention to the choices we're making, the things we're saying to our children, the things we're saying to ourselves as parents. So that's one piece about equipping ourselves, is really paying attention. The second piece ties in, of course, then our relationships with our children, is how are we going to work with them in our daily life? Through the experiences we have, they are becoming, my emphasis would be more self-aware because they need the same tools that we do. And then over time, as they develop that self-awareness, that they are able to course correct, if you will. So when you think about a very young child, you can't expect, or you can, but it's going to be a disaster for everybody. You don't want to expect a 2-year-old to have a lot of self-control and self-discipline. That's not what a 2-year-old does. Over time, though, when you work with your 2-year-old and you help them understand, here are some boundaries, here's what we do in our family, here are things we don't do. Over time, then as they grow, then they start to be able to bring that forward themselves without so much support from us. So it's really a twofold process, is equipping ourselves so we can parent from a place of deepest consciousness and most mindfulness, and then giving our children some of those same tools that they can develop as they grow older and develop and mature.
And I would imagine that consistency and through repetition is a critical, factor here too.
It's interesting that you asked that, Sharon, because I actually want to give a different take, because I think that while there is definitely some value in consistency, so I'm not saying throw it all out, I also think it's important for parents to practice authenticity in addition to consistency. And so here's what that might look like. So consistency, what I find with my clients is most parents tend to think, well, I need to have the same rules or the same way that we do things all the time, whether it's a routine or what the expectations are in our house, when we have dinner or who's doing chores or anything like that. The challenge with that is, as human beings, we're not consistent. So we have days, and I'm sure you've experienced this, right? You have days where you're like, I have all kinds of energy and I'm feeling good and things are going smoothly. And in that state, we have greater capacity to deal with things that maybe normally would throw us off a little bit. Mm-hmm. So for parents, I think authenticity is really important. So we might normally say to our child, okay, we eat dessert at the end of dinner. And we have our reasons for that, and we work with them. That's consistent. But if we are authentic, maybe one day we're...
I think we might be losing you a little in the audio, in the audio portion of this. So you might want to, just reiterate that last point.
Okay, sorry about that.
That's okay.
So what I was saying is authenticity would be noticing in the moment where you're at as a parent. So if you don't have reserves and you really can't deal with a lot of changes in the schedule or anything like that, then you want to be able to say to your child, you know what, normally we're able to do this. Today, mom is too tired to do this. Uh-huh. That's authenticity. So that might be a change. That might be something different. It's not consistent. But if you're truthful, then you're taking care of yourself in that moment. And you're also giving your child an accurate picture of here's what you can expect right now, even if it deviates from what we normally do.
Yeah. When I said consistency, I think I was speaking more from a perspective of what I teach and my focus. But to your point, flexibility is then a key factor. What I was referring to was inconsistency was maybe a parent providing tools to their children to help build their confidence or to help them become more resilient or to self-empower them. As an example, from my perspective, if I'm teaching about breathing techniques, using breathing to teach a child breathing as a way to calm themselves, and so that they become more self-empowered through that process would require some consistency in terms of repetition so that they develop that habit. But from your coaching parents' perspective, I can see where flexibility is certainly a key factor, and using discernment.
Yeah, they're both important. And thanks for that example. I think that is a perfect example of, yes, consistency there would be really valuable so the child is able to learn and integrate, because it takes us many experiences to learn something. We don't just learn it with, oh, mom told me one time and now I know how to do breathing to calm myself. So we do need the consistency. What I find with so many parents is that old paradigm of, just you need to be consistent. It needs to always be this way. And then I work with moms primarily, and a lot of them then tend to end up doubting themselves, like, well, last night I wanted to do this, or this felt right in the moment, and now I'm not sure. And so that's the piece that I wanted to mention. So speaking to that part of that equation, to say experiment and be flexible, like you're saying, and be mindful of what really fits for me or my child or our family at this moment, not just normally.
That's a great point. Thank you. How can parents best teach children life skills? What is your experience with that?
My number one favorite way, and it's the hardest way, but it's the best way, it's to model it. You really can't say it enough, because you cannot expect your child to do something that you don't do. So you can still say and teach them and verbally give them, here's what I'd like you to do. And yet we know that our children, that's how they learn primarily, is through imitation. So if you want them to be loving to others or talk in a gentle way, that's what you want to demonstrate. And so it's hard, because parents, we often want to just say, well, what do I tell them? It's like, you can tell them what you want. They're going to.
That kind of goes back to the, do as I say, not what I do, old philosophy. But yes, I would agree with that. Modeling is huge, because it's literally, what they will mimic. And particularly, if you start at the earliest age, and you're able to sort of sustain that throughout, their early years, I think it's huge. If you can
I say one more thing, Sharon, just because I don't want
to. Oh, you can say more than one thing. So feel free.
The other thing I would say is really be mindful of when you're teaching a lesson or attempting to impart some wisdom that you think is important. So many parents, one of the things that we do that we don't realize is not going to work for us or our children is when we attempt to teach lessons in a moment where emotions are high. So something's just happened with our child and we're feeling frazzled or angry or disappointed. Maybe they have some emotions going on. And in that moment, we're attempting to say, well, this is not what to do and this is what to do. In that heightened emotional state, two things happen. Is one, we tend to convey messages that we really don't want to convey. So we can pass on messages like shame. And I know parents out there don't want to do that. At the same time, children in a heightened emotional state, they have less access to their brain, the learning parts of their brain, which are already underdeveloped depending on their ages. So it's really basically a waste of time. That's what I tell parents. It's like, don't do the teaching in the moment. In the moment, you want to help them calm by staying calm yourself or getting calm, help them feel connected and safe, help everybody settle. And then maybe it's a few minutes later, maybe it's an hour later, maybe it's a day later. Then is when you have the conversation about pulling the dog's tail or hitting your sister. Here's why we don't want to do those things. Here's what I want you to work with instead. So that is another important aspect of how we can teach, is make sure our teaching is done at a time when everybody's calm.
Yeah, I think that's true. And it's a great thing for us to all remember, because even as adults, when we have differences between us or conflict to work out, it's never a good idea to do it in a heightened state, right?
Not if you want a good outcome. No, it isn't. But we forget. Again, it's sort of, we get triggered. And so then we're wanting to, I have to tell you what you did and why you should do it differently. And it's like, ooh, yeah, I learned that still myself many times in a year.
Yeah, I think we'd like to resolve it, because somehow it makes us feel better if we can just nip it in the bud right at that moment. But as you're saying, it's not the time to do it, because we just shut down and the information isn't going to penetrate and it's going nowhere.
Right.
I'm wondering, what do parents need to be doing to provide their young children with long-term health and happiness? What is your take on that?
That's a great question. And if I absolutely knew the answer, I probably would be on Oprah. But, I think that one of the best things we can do for them is provide, again, going back to a model, provide that model for ourselves. And frankly, for many parents, they're really struggling in different ways. Maybe it's financially, maybe it's in the relationship in the home, maybe it's in their job. And so without trying to overwhelm anybody, I don't want to do that. I would say really look for yourself and say, what are some things I can do for me that is going to help me be at my most rested, most, creative, most resourceful, most patient. All those things are going to help, because again, it's going to model for your child, oh, look, taking care of oneself and being mindful. It's also going to put you in the best state as a parent to be able to have a really solid relationship with your child. And that, from what we know about attachment theory and the research of the importance of those relationships in the early years, that really gives that child that strong foundation. So for me, I would say, don't worry so much about, how are they reading or what are they doing in school? I know those do matter for many folks. And I would say, really, how strong is that connection? How solid do they feel with you? How safe? How can you really put that foundation under them so that they're really strong and rooted? Because from that place, then they have the greatest capacity to develop new skills that help them create that health and happiness throughout their life. So it's a little bit, it can sound a little bit complex, but at the same time, I think if we simplify it and say, boy, there's a million things as a parent we could work on, and we hear a ton of them in the media, right? We think, oh, I'm supposed to do this now and this. It's like, take care of yourself, take care of your children at a really basic fundamental level so everybody's feeling safe, seen, secure, and soothed. Mm-hmm. That's a great, great start, great foundation.
That's terrific, because when they're feeling secure and they're feeling safe, when they go off to school or, out into the outer world, when they have that foundation, then they can show up way more present and aware in the moment, and everything just goes so much better than when they, are out in the world and they have all this worry or concern or disconnection. So to me, that is such a great point. And, you just mentioned about feeling safe and secure and all of those things. I know we might not have planned on talking about this, but I hope that you would touch a little bit on the whole idea of the punishment, and how that, because I think probably parents are challenged with, what to do, how to do it, is it okay, is it not? But if you could just give us a couple of tidbits or kernels of your wisdom in regard to that, I think it would be really important before I let you go today.
I'd be glad to do that. And thanks for bringing us back to that. I want to speak very briefly to, I think, part of where that comes from, besides that's the model that most of us had in our own childhood. So that's when it's wired in early, it's our early life experience. It's what we tend to revert to, especially under stress. So one, just know that that's in you, and it doesn't mean it's the right thing. It's just there. And it goes with the cultural mindset that really does say that people need some kind of consequence for them to learn not to do the thing that they're not supposed to do. And that's very outdated model, even though it's still popular and it's the most predominant model out there. Our brain research says that that's not the case, that really that learning comes from that strong relationship. So what I would say for somebody who's either new on this path or says, I don't know, Shonnie, I think they need some kind of punishment, I would invite you to experiment. First of all, don't take my word for it. Experiment and see what happens. The more you can help your child in those moments, just come in those moments of the behavior you don't want, the things that you want them to change, in those moments that you can focus on connection and helping them know that they are safe with you, the more receptive they're going to be to your teaching. So when then you say, here's what I want you to do instead, they're going to, oh, okay, I can listen to mom because she doesn't hit me or she doesn't put me in a timeout, that I feel safe with her. The other thing is that there's so much development going on for children that they really do need lots of practice. So they are going to be more willing to practice what you're teaching when, again, they feel safe and they don't think, oh, I'm going to get punished because I did it wrong. It's just like you and I. If somebody came to us and said, well, Shonnie, yesterday you acted like a real jerk to me, and so I'm never going to be your friend, I'd be like, oh, oops, I was having a day. And it's not an excuse. It's just saying we all need that grace. And so we want to give our children that same grace and trust that they are going to be able to learn with repetition, which you mentioned earlier, in that safe relationship with us, that they're going to say, oh, I'm going to get it. I mean, I have an 8.5-year-old daughter, and I remember things where I'd think, boy, when is she going to learn this piece? And it's like, when I just was patient with it and said, okay, I'm going to keep modeling this and not make her wrong for being 6 and behaving like a 6-year-old, Now I look at her at 8.5 and I say, wow, look, that's there. That piece is there. So that's the other piece that we get to work on as parents, is our patience for our children, and remembering that they've got a lot going on. They're learning from their beginning of life, language, a whole culture, how to function in this amazing and yet very complex world. So if you really looked at it and thought about what are they actually learning from birth onward, I think we'd be a little more gracious with them and say, wow, they're actually doing pretty well, even though they just, grabbed their sister's toy or, spilled all their Cheerios on the floor. We could be like, yeah, but they're doing lots of other things. And so remember that, and give yourself credit too as a parent. You're not going to be perfect. Be gentle with yourself, forgive yourself, and forgive your kids too. You're learning together and growing together.
I think that's beautiful. And it's a great way for us to end our conversation here, at least temporarily, because I know we have a little bit of a time constraint. But I want to thank you so much for joining me today. That was great and very helpful info. I think your wisdom and knowledge on the subject is one that any of the viewers should seek out if they're interested to check out Shonnie Lavender and her work, and feel free to come back and join us on the show again, another time. We'd love to have you back.
Well, thank you, Sharon. I enjoyed it so much. Thank you for asking thoughtful questions and putting some ideas out there. And I would love to just say, besides my website, if people are interested or anything really resonated, I'm doing a webinar next week. It's about being a shame-free family. So people can find that at shonnielavender.com/no shame. So that's something, free webinar, love to have people join. So thank you for inviting me here today, and I would love to come back sometime, Sharon.
Oh, perfect. You're very welcome. Another way that parents can support their children early on is to provide them with tools that build confidence and resilience. And on that note, I want to invite you to please check out all the I Am a Lovable Me books today by clicking on the link at the very end of this video. The books are available in hardcover as well as audio iBooks. Also, you'll never miss any of our great shows by liking us on Facebook or subscribing to us on YouTube or following us on Periscope. It's been great having you with us today. And if you have a topic that you think parents and caregivers would want to hear about or would like to be a guest on my show, please go ahead and message me on Facebook. I'm your host, Sharon Penchina, and I'll be back next week with more self-empowerment tips for you and your children. Thank you all for joining in, and be sure to have a fantastic day. Thank you.
Thank you for watching The Lovable Me Show. Also, if you have any questions for Lovable, go ahead and ask away. Don't forget to visit us next week, right here in the Facebook bug.